So I just finished watching Stranger Things Volume 2, and there's one scene in particular that really stuck out to me for multiple reasons. That's the Nancy and Jonathan engagement scene in the lab in the Upside Down. Now, the first reason it stuck out to me is the scene on its own is actually pretty good. I think it actually works pretty well as a way to repair the relationship, have this big emotional payoff to all these struggles and problems that they've been having throughout the show in their relationship. Just as a way, for them to come clean and tell each other all the things that have been building up all to this point, all this vent up frustration that they have. I also really like the directorial style here, the close-up angles between the two and the music in the background and the fact that they didn't cut to anything else going on. Just let this moment sit and resonate with the audience. I really like that. But, and there is a but, this scene in a vacuum is great. It's phenomenal, actually. Well acted, well directed, and well scored. But that's the thing. The scene doesn't exist in a vacuum. Again, when I first watched the scene, I thought it was a really nice moment for the two characters to finally fix their relationships in their deathbed. As the world around them is crumbling, they can leave that all out and get engaged to their unproposal, unwedding, right? A cathartic ending to characters that would never eventually end up getting married, would die happy. And that's the problem. They didn't die. They made it out alive and made it out fine. And nothing happened after that. Now, I really thought that this would be the end for these two characters. But no, the world around them stopped crumbling, and eventually Steve and Dustin were able to save them. And the problem is, nothing amounted of the scene afterwards. Up to the end of episode 7, there was no mention by either Nancy, Jonathan, or anyone else of these two characters getting engaged. I feel like that's a pretty big deal. I feel like we should have seen something from this. There was no mention whatsoever of them getting engaged. When the engagement ring fell down, they didn't even show the characters going to pick up the ring again, or I don't even think Nancy was wearing it after that. None of the other characters pointed it out. They didn't bother telling anyone else, which I feel like is kind of a big deal to not tell anyone about. Especially, if you're gonna be going into a battle where the world might end, you might die, you'd probably want to mention, look at this, we got engaged. And this has really made the scene fall short in the grand scheme of things. The fact that none of this was mentioned afterwards at all, not a single mention whatsoever. I feel like we needed at least one more scene of someone pointing out the ring on Nancy's finger so they can have their moment like, Nancy, is that a ring on your finger? And she'd be like, yeah, we got engaged. Like, we thought we were gonna die, but so we got engaged. And then that could have been the moment to resolve the Steve, Nancy, and Jonathan love triangle right there naturally. But Steve accepting or coming to terms with it, we could have had some scene like that where someone mentions it and they tell everyone and everyone congratulates them, and you could have this thematic moment where it's like, regardless of how bad the world around you is, love and people you care about are like getting engaged, like getting married, that supersedes everything. I feel like that could have been something we could do. Or my preferred version, how I thought the scene was originally going to go, was these characters were going to die. I thought that Nancy and Jonathan should have died there. Because, first of all, that felt like a pretty good ending for these two guys' characters. A cathartic ending where both of them resolve their relationship problems on their deathbed and they go out happy in peace together. And Steve finds them and has to deal with that. Like, oh, their friends actually died, and this would actually add stakes and consequences to the lab part of the Upside Down, which there were none to. That's another issue I talked about in a previous video. But Steve would have had to live with that trauma. Dustin would have had to live with that trauma of seeing two other people that they care about die. That could have also boosted Will's story, another bit of trauma for Will's story, and his coming out scene being more powerful. It could be another motivating factor for him to actually tell everyone to actually come out, because he wasn't able to tell Jonathan. Since he doesn't want to have to go through that, lose someone else before he can actually tell everyone about himself, he decides to sit them all down and tell them. And also would have helped with the cast bloat problem that the show faces. I think there are more than 15 main characters in this ensemble Scooby Gang that we have going on. After that point, Nancy and Jonathan haven't really done anything because no one's mentioned that they've been engaged, and they haven't really added anything to the plot that Dustin or Steve couldn't have done. The stuff with Holly flying from the sky works the exact same if Nancy and Jonathan aren't there. And everything else plays out the exact same if these two characters aren't there. They literally have served no purpose to the plot after that. And I think it would have been a perfect moment to kill them off. But again, the Duffer Brothers, too scared to kill off any of their main characters. And so we're left with 15 characters going to fight off Vecna at the end of the day. And I really wish this scene played out differently and Nancy and Jonathan's story came to an end there. I think it would have been a really good ending and given this actual middle part of the season a lot more impact, because as of right now, literally no consequences happen to any of the characters. And I think that's one of my biggest problems with these middle three episodes that we've gotten, from episode 5 to episode 7, no one has suffered any severe consequences. So yeah, this one scene I think like kind of encapsulates all of this. The scene itself, it was actually pretty good, but that's only in a vacuum. In the broader scope of the show, it kind of suffered, and that's really unfortunate. But let me know what you guys think. Am I crazy? I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But thanks for watching. Take care.